No one had entered the paralyzed princess's tower in 3 years without permission. It was called the Room of Silence, where joy went to die. So when the vampire king found a maid illegally dancing inside it, making his broken daughter laugh until tears ran down her face, his first instinct was rage that could end her life with a thought. But he didn't kill her, because in that moment, he realized this human girl was doing the impossible, bringing life back to what death had claimed. Now every night he returns to watch her dance from the shadows, and something ancient and frozen inside his chest is starting to crack open. But the Vampire Council has noticed, and they're coming for her. Before we begin, tell me, do you believe something as fragile as hope can save something as dark as a vampire's soul? Because tonight, in the shadowed halls of Castle Hamon, that question is about to be answered. He was a vampire king who ruled with power and fear. They said the vampire king's heart was as cold as the moon. Until one night, he caught his maid dancing for his paralyzed daughter. What he saw that night didn't just surprise him, it changed everything he thought he knew about being alive. They said no sound could pierce the silence of the vampire king's castle. No cry, no prayer, no laughter. For 3 long years, not even an echo dared to disturb the grief that haunted those halls. Until one night, it happened. The vampire king, Gareth Hamon, froze outside his daughter's tower, the place no servant dared enter without permission. The place where joy had died. And from within came laughter. Soft, bright, human laughter, his daughter's laughter. The sound he thought he would never hear again. But what stopped him wasn't fear. It was what he saw through that half-open door. A young maid, barefoot, spinning in the candlelight, dancing as though her soul could command the wind itself. And before her, the paralyzed princess, the king's daughter, was smiling. What happened next would test the heart of an immortal and change the fate of the realm forever. The eternal twilight of Castle Hamon stretched endlessly, its black stone towers clawing at the silver sky, its great halls echoing only with silence. Once, those halls had known music. Once, laughter had spilled from every balcony, carried by the voice of a little girl named Hamon. But that was before the night everything changed. King Gareth Hamon, ruler of the Northern Realm, had walked these corridors for centuries, feared by men, worshipped by vampires. His word was law, his command absolute. And yet, for all his immortality, he could not conquer the one enemy that had brought him to his knees: grief. 3 years ago, dark magic struck his household like a blade through the heart. His beloved wife, Queen Isadora, a mortal woman who had taught him compassion, was slain. And their only daughter, Princess Evina, was left paralyzed from the waist down. Since that night, the king's world had gone still. Every evening, he walked the same path to the tower chambers, a ritual carved from sorrow. He would stand at the door, listening to nothing but the hollow tick of time. His daughter had not spoken a word since the attack. Not laughed. Not smiled. Not cried. And every failed attempt to heal her carved another crack in his undead soul. He summoned witches from the blood marshes. He offered gold to healers of the eastern courts. He even sought forbidden blood rituals whispered only in shadows. Each one ended the same: Evina, silent and broken, and the king more hollow than before. To the world, Gareth Hamon remained the Iron Sovereign, the immortal king whose heart had long since turned to stone. But within these walls, he was just a father, mourning the sound of his child's laughter. Then came that night. The moon hung low, bathing the castle in silver fire. Gareth made his usual rounds, boots echoing against marble, cloak trailing like smoke. He approached the tower door, expecting silence. Instead, he heard music. A faint, trembling melody, like bells and wind, drifting through the crack beneath the door. His body went still. And then laughter. Not a ghostly echo. Not a trick. His daughter's laughter. For the first time in 3 years, his ancient heart forgot how to beat. With slow, deliberate steps, He pushed the door open just enough to see. The sight before him defied reason. Avina sat upright in her chair, her tiny hands clapping to the rhythm of a music box resting beside her. And in the center of the room, a girl danced. A maid, perhaps 19 or 20, her hair loose, her bare feet gliding across the marble floor. She twirled and dipped as if caught in a dream, her movements soft and fluid, telling a story that words could not. The flicker of candlelight painted her in gold. The shadows moved with her, as though the very air bent to her will. And Avina, his broken, silent daughter, laughed until tears ran down her pale cheeks. The Vampire King's first instinct was rage. A mortal girl, trespassing in his daughter's chambers, violating royal command. He could have ended her life with a thought. But he didn't. Because in that instant, Gareth realized something terrible and beautiful all at once. That this fragile, human act was accomplishing what centuries of his immortal power could not. Hope. He stepped back, unseen, swallowed by the shadows. The laughter followed him through the corridors, haunting him more deeply than silence ever could. And as he walked away, the great Vampire King, conqueror of kingdoms and destroyer of empires, whispered into the empty night. I have fought wars, crushed armies, and outlived entire civilizations. But this sound, this laughter, has brought me to my knees. From that night on, something changed within the castle. The servants whispered. The torches burned a little brighter. And in the heart of a king who had forgotten how to feel, a fragile spark began to flicker once more. For 3 years, Castle Hamon had been a tomb. Its marble halls echoed only with footsteps and orders, its windows shuttered against laughter. But now, in the kitchens, maids exchanged glances and half-smiles. Guards murmured of what they'd heard from the tower, the impossible rumor that the princess had laughed. Laughed? One scoffed under his breath. The little princess? Aye, another whispered. They say the king himself froze when he heard it. No one dared say it aloud, but hope had slipped back into the castle like dawn seeping through a crack in the curtains. In her small attic room beneath the eaves, Elsa Allen sat on her narrow bed, staring at her worn dancing shoes. They were a relic from another life, a time when her world had been filled with light and song. She should have been terrified after what happened the night before. She had danced in the Forbidden Tower, in front of the princess herself. If word reached the wrong ears, she could lose her position, or worse. But all she could think about was that sound. The laughter. Avina's laughter had filled the chamber like sunlight breaking through clouds, and Elsa had felt something inside her unlock, something she hadn't felt since her sister Lena's last day. She closed her eyes, hearing Lena's voice again, faint as memory. Movement is life, Elsa. Even when we can't walk, we can still fly. A tear escaped her eye before she brushed it away. That phrase had carried her through every hardship since the fever took her sister 5 years ago. The two of them had danced even when Lena's strength faded, small movements at first, fingers swaying, hands painting invisible patterns in the air. Dance had been their language when words failed. So when Elsa saw the princess, pale and still, staring at her mother's music box, she hadn't thought, she'd simply moved. And somehow it had worked. That morning, she was sent back to the tower with her cleaning pails and brushes. Her heart pounded the entire climb up the spiral staircase. The guards at the door gave her cautious looks, but didn't stop her this time. Go on, one muttered. The king gave no new orders. Seems he's letting you. Letting her? That word sat strangely in her chest. Inside, the chamber looked different in daylight. The curtains were open, spilling gold light across the marble. Princess Avina sat by the window, her small form wrapped in a soft blanket. She didn't look up at first. Her hair long, pale as moonlight, hung loosely over her shoulders. Elsa curtsied, unsure if she should speak. Good morning, my lady. No response. Just that same faraway gaze. Elsa began her chores quietly, dusting shelves, arranging the princess's toys. The music box sat open on the table. Its delicate ballerina figurine was chipped but still turned, playing that haunting waltz. When the melody started again, Elsa paused mid-motion. Avina's eyes flickered toward it, just for a second. And without thinking, Elsa began to move. She didn't dance as before, not a grand performance, but a soft, wordless waltz. Her hands moved gently through the air, tracing the rise and fall of the music. Each turn, each sway was a whisper of comfort, not spectacle. At first, Avina only watched. Her small hands gripped the blanket, eyes wide, uncertain. Then a tiny thing happened. The corner of her mouth lifted. A smile. Faint but real. Elsa's breath caught. She twirled once more, slower this time, letting her skirt brush the floor like a sigh. When the song ended, Avina whispered something so soft Elsa almost missed it. "Do it again." Her voice was fragile, but it was there. The first words the princess had spoken in months. Elsa's heart leapt. She wound the music box again, the melody rising once more. Outside, unseen in the hall, King Gareth Hamon stood in silence. He had come, as he always did, to keep watch unseen. He hadn't meant to linger, but the sound drew him closer. Through the cracked door, he watched his daughter smiling, watched the maid twirl like sunlight come to life. There was no magic spell, no incantation, no ritual. Just a girl moving with grace and sorrow and warmth, and somehow, that was enough to make his daughter's eyes light again. He should have been angry. He should have punished this insolence. But the sight disarmed him completely. The king, the warrior, the immortal, felt utterly powerless. And for the first time in centuries, he didn't mind. That night, Elsa returned again. She didn't know if she was permitted, but something inside her told her to come. The music box awaited her, already open. Avina's little face brightened at the sight of her. "Will you dance again?" the princess asked, her tone shy but eager. Elsa smiled softly. "If my lady commands it." Avina shook her head. "Not command. Ask." And so Elsa danced again. But this time, the story she told through her movements was not just of grace, it was of loss and love and learning to live again. Her arms became wings, her steps whispers of memory. She danced with the shadows, not against them. Avina clapped and laughed, her eyes alive with wonder. From the doorway, hidden in the dark, King Gareth watched. Every movement carved a question deeper into his heart, a question he could not escape. When the music ended and Elsa bowed, he turned away, his cloak whispering against the stone floor. In the empty corridor, his voice broke the silence. "How can a mortal child do what a king cannot?" The words echoed softly, carried on the wind that moved through the ancient halls of Castle Hamon. And somewhere deep within those walls, the shadows began to stir with light once more. Night fell softly over Castle Hamon, gilding its black towers in frost and silence. The torches burned low, their light trembling against the stone, and in the upper halls, King Gareth Hamon walked alone. He told himself it was duty that brought him there each evening, his father's duty, his king's burden. But as his footsteps neared the forbidden tower, he could not deny what drew him now was something far more fragile. Curiosity. And something dangerously close to longing. He had ruled for centuries, outlasted wars and winters and the rise of mortal empires. He had buried lovers and comrades, seen eternity's face, and found it hollow. But now he stood in shadow, watching a human girl spin light from sorrow. Her name was Elsa Allen. A servant. A mortal. And yet her mere presence unsettled him more than any rival ever had. That night, she danced again. The princess's chamber glowed dimly with candlelight, soft gold spilling across the marble floor. Avina sat propped on her bed of silks, a small smile tugging her lips as the music box played its haunting tune. Elsa moved to it, not with precision, but with heart. Her steps were uncertain, her gestures fluid, like memories given form. To Gareth's immortal eyes, her movement told stories. One night, she danced the fall of stars returning home to the heavens. Another, she mimed a bird learning to fly again after breaking its wing. He had seen the greatest ballet troupes in human history, commanded orchestras to play for his courts of night, but never had he seen dance like this. There was no vanity, no perfection, only truth. And it made him furious. Furious that she had defied his order to stay away from the tower. Furious that her presence had undone years of silence. Furious that something inside him, something long thought dead, had begun to stir. His heart. He clenched his fists in the dark. The sound of her feet brushing the floor, the faint hum that left her lips as she turned, it made the centuries feel too heavy, his control too thin. He should have ended it. Should have sent her away. Yet every night, he found himself there again. Watching. The girl who danced with shadows. Then, one evening, everything changed. The melody was softer that night, slower. Elsa's movements were not joyous, but reverent, almost prayerful. She moved like someone remembering love, tracing invisible wings in the air with her hands. Avina watched her, eyes wide and glassy. And then, it happened. A faint golden shimmer flickered around the princess's small hands. Like sunlight trapped beneath her skin. Gareth froze. Magic. Not dark magic, the twisted kind that had cursed her, but something purer, older. The magic of life itself. It glowed for only a heartbeat before fading, but in that moment, Gareth felt centuries of grief fracture within him. Could this mortal girl's emotion, her joy, have stirred what all his blood rituals, scrolls, and power could not? That night, he could bear it no longer. When Elsa curtsied and prepared to leave, the shadows at the edge of the chamber thickened, and the king stepped forward. His presence filled the room like thunder. His cloak trailed darkness, his eyes glowed faintly crimson. Elsa froze mid-breath. Her knees nearly gave way as she dropped into a bow so deep her forehead touched the cold marble. "Your Majesty," she gasped. "Forgive me. I only wished to." Silence. The single word rolled through the air, quiet yet absolute. Avina's eyes went wide. "Father, please." But Gareth's gaze was locked on Elsa. "You defied my orders. You entered the Forbidden Tower. Do you know what they call this room, girl?" Her voice trembled. "The Room of Silence, my lord. And yet you filled it with noise." His tone was steel, but his eyes betrayed conflict. Elsa's breath hitched. "Not noise, my king," laughter. "I only wanted her to remember joy." The air between them stilled. Avina's small voice broke the silence. "Father, please don't send her away. She makes the darkness less stark." The child's plea cut through his armor like light through glass. Gareth turned toward her, his daughter, whose eyes now glimmered faintly gold. He drew in a slow breath, then looked back to the trembling maid. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, almost human. "You will continue," he said. "Every evening at twilight. You will dance for her." Elsa lifted her head, disbelief softening her fear. "My lord." "And," he added, "you will tell me why you dance." Her throat tightened. For a moment she seemed too afraid to answer. Then, slowly, she rose to her feet, the flicker of courage returning to her eyes. "Because movement is life, my lord," she said softly. "Even when we can't walk, we can still fly." He stared at her, silent. "I dance," she continued, "so your daughter remembers she can still fly." Her words hung in the air, fragile and pure. Gareth turned away before she could see the flicker in his expression, the ache, the almost smile. Without another word, he swept into the corridor, the echo of her voice following him down the hall. For the first time in 3 years, his footsteps felt lighter. For the first time in centuries, the weight in his chest felt less like stone. And as he paused at the great window overlooking his sleeping realm, Gareth whispered into the night, "Movement is life." He looked toward the tower one last time. "Then perhaps there is life yet." Perfect. This is the pivotal awakening chapter, where beauty and emotion merge into quiet magic. It follows seamlessly from the poetic tension of Chapter 3, evolving into light, warmth, and trembling awe, like watching grief turn into wonder. Here's the full cinematic draft. In the nights that followed, the silence in Castle Hamon began to break. It started softly, like snow melting from stone. A whisper here, a flicker of laughter there. Then one morning, a servant dared to hum while polishing the silver, and no one shushed her. They said the princess had spoken a word. They said the king had smiled. They said the torches burned brighter these days, as if even the fire had found hope again. Every evening, as twilight painted the high windows in violet and gold, Elsa danced. Avina waited eagerly, wrapped in velvet blankets, her pale hair catching the lamplight. Her once empty eyes now gleamed like dawn after storm. Sometimes she giggled mid-performance. Sometimes she clapped offbeat. But always, always she watched. And Gareth watched too, from the same shadowed corridor, unseen but ever present. Each night he swore he would not return. Each night he found himself standing there again, heart drumming to the rhythm of her quiet, wordless waltz. He noticed things now small, human things he'd long forgotten. The way Elsa's breath hitched before a difficult spin. The way Avina's laughter made the dust on the tapestries dance. The way the air itself seemed to listen. Weeks passed, and the change became undeniable. Color returned to Avina's cheeks. She began speaking in short, halting phrases, soft, uncertain words like bird, music, and papa. Each syllable was a miracle. Gareth stood in the hallway one night, gripping the stone archway as her small voice reached him through the door. His immortal strength meant nothing against that sound. He nearly fell to his knees. Then came the night that would be remembered as the night of light. The storm had rolled in from the northern cliffs, hurling rain against the windows like ghosts demanding entry. Inside, the tower chamber glowed with candles, their flames wavering to the steady tick of the music box. Elsa stood at the center of the floor. Her dress was simple linen and lace, but when she moved, it seemed spun of starlight. "This story," she said softly, "is for you, my lady." Avina's eyes widened with anticipation. Elsa began to dance. Her movements told a tale of a queen who became a star, who lingered in the heavens to watch over her daughter. Every turn, every gesture shimmered with love that refused to fade, even beyond death. Her arms swept upward like wings. Her bare feet glided across marble like whispers. And as she spun, something stirred. The candle flames flared. The air thickened, humming faintly. Then light bloomed. Avina gasped. Her small hands began to glow softly at first, then brighter, golden threads weaving between her fingers. Elsa froze mid-turn, her eyes widening. The music box faltered, yet the melody continued, as if the air itself carried the song. The light pulsed in time with her heartbeat. It flickered, danced, and followed her movements. When Elsa moved her hand, the light moved too. When she turned, it swirled around her like a golden tide. It was alive. Gareth stepped from the shadows, unable to stay hidden any longer. For the first time in centuries, wonder, not command, filled his face. He had seen magic in all its forms, destructive, corrupt, and cruel. But this was different. This was the magic of love remembered. Avina began to cry, not from pain, but release. "Mama's light," she whispered through tears. "I can feel Mama's light again." Her voice trembled. "She's not gone, is she?" Elsa sank to her knees before the princess, tears shining in her own eyes. "No, my lady," she murmured. "Even stars remember how to shine." Avina reached for her. Their hands met, and the room filled with light. For a heartbeat, it felt as though dawn itself had entered the vampire's castle. The glow slowly dimmed. The music box ticked once more, soft and steady. Avina fell into peaceful sleep, her lips curved in a small, dreaming smile. Elsa stayed kneeling beside her, hand still over the child's. And Gareth. Gareth stood motionless, the echo of light still painting his face. He did not speak. He could not. Something deep within him, something ancient and frozen, had cracked open. As he turned away, the words Elsa had spoken echoed through his mind like prayer. Even stars remember how to shine. In the silence that followed, Gareth pressed a trembling hand over his chest. He felt nothing. And yet, he swore he could hear a faint, forgotten rhythm beneath his ribs. A heartbeat. He left the tower before dawn, the sound of soft laughter and starlight still following him down the long corridor. And for the first time since the Queen's death, the King of the North feared not his enemies, but the strange, human warmth that was slowly waking within him. Word traveled fast through Castle Hamon. Too fast. By dawn, every corridor hummed with whispers. Servants spoke of a glow seen from the tower window, of laughter that returned to the royal halls, of the paralyzed princess whose hands now shone with golden fire. But there was one rumor that carried sharper teeth. A human maid had done what no vampire could. By the next evening, the council summoned him. The chamber was cold stone and older than most empires, lit only by pale blue torches that burned without heat. 12 ancient vampires sat in a half-circle before the throne, their eyes glinting like shards of night. At the center stood King Gareth Hamon, black cloak trailing behind him, expression unreadable. "Your Majesty," hissed Lord Varos, the oldest among them. "We hear troubling reports." Immortal, a servant, given access to the heir's private chambers. "Not only access," added Lady Myria, voice like ice. "It is said the girl's emotions stir the princess's dormant magic. Mortal sentiment corrupting royal blood. The council fears contamination," said another. "Human warmth has no place in immortal lineage. You are the king of vampires, not the keeper of human pets." Their voices rose, fangs flashing with outrage. Gareth listened in silence, hands folded behind his back. The torches flickered once, as if waiting. Finally, he spoke, softly, dangerously. "When my daughter lay silent and dying, he began. You offered me counsel. You offered spells. You offered politics." He looked up, eyes glowing crimson. "But not one of you offered hope." The council fell still. "My daughter's laughter," Gareth continued, voice echoing through the hall, "is my kingdom now. And anyone who threatens her light, threatens me." Power rippled through the chamber like thunder. The torches flared white, bowing to the force of his will. None dared speak again. When Gareth turned and walked out, even the oldest of them lowered their gaze. That night, the storm returned. Rain lashed the castle walls, wind howled through the towers, but inside the princess's chamber, warmth reigned. Elsa spun barefoot across the marble, skirts swirling like firelight. The music box sang softly, a lullaby reborn as a battle cry. Avina watched, eyes wide, cheeks flushed with life. Gareth stood nearby, arms folded, but his posture was different tonight, less ruler, more father. He didn't hide in the shadows anymore. "Do you think," Avina asked between giggles, "Mama would like this dance?" Elsa smiled mid-spin. "She'd love it, my lady. She'd probably join in." Avina laughed again, and then, as Elsa twirled once more, something shifted. Her laughter caught in her throat. Her hands gripped the arms of her wheelchair. Her small body tensed, trembling. "Avina?" Gareth's voice broke through the moment, half warning, half prayer. The princess took a deep breath. "I want to try," she whispered. Before either of them could stop her, she pushed against the armrests, straining, shaking, her legs trembling beneath her gown. "Avina!" Elsa gasped, rushing forward. But Avina kept going. Inch by inch, her knees straightened. Her body swayed with effort, but determination burned in her eyes. Then she stood. For the first time in 3 years. Her feet touched the cold stone floor, unsteady but real. Her fingers reached toward Elsa's outstretched hand. The music box's melody swelled, filling the chamber like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. Gareth stumbled forward, disbelief written across his immortal face. He caught her just as her legs gave way, gathering her trembling body into his arms. Avina was laughing and crying at once, tears glistening on her cheeks. "I stood, father," she whispered. "Did you see? I stood." He clutched her closer, his own voice breaking as he counted under his breath. 1. His shoulders shook. 2. Elsa's hands covered her mouth, tears spilling freely. 3. The servants gathered at the door, unable to look away. 4. The light from Avina's hands pulsed brighter. 5. He exhaled the last number like a prayer. The entire room fell silent except for the soft sound of rain easing against the windows. When Gareth looked up, Elsa was kneeling beside them, her eyes shining through her tears. "Told you, my lady," she whispered with a trembling smile. "You can still fly." Avina giggled through her sobs, pressing her forehead against her father's chest. And the ancient vampire king, conqueror of nations, breaker of armies, closed his eyes and let himself weep for the first time in centuries. Outside, dawn broke over the mountains. The storm clouds parted. Light, gentle, gold, and impossibly pure, spilled through the tower window, falling across them all. The castle that had long forgotten morning found itself bathed in it. And deep in his chest, beneath centuries of ice, King Gareth Hamon felt something unfamiliar but unmistakable. A heartbeat. 6 months later, dawn finally came to Castle Hamon. Not the dawn of the sun, the castle had long since forgotten the warmth of daylight, but a dawn of sound, of laughter, of music that dared to breathe again between the marble pillars. For the first time since the Queen's death, the festival of starlight returned. The courtyards, once draped in silence, now shimmered with thousands of flickering lanterns, each flame enchanted to mimic a falling star. The people whispered in disbelief, tears and smiles mingling as they prepared offerings and hung garlands of silver ivy across the gates. But all eyes turned toward the heart of it all, the great hall. King Gareth stood there, cloaked not in war armor, but in deep velvet trimmed with gold. His crown gleamed faintly in the candlelight. He looked older, softer, not in weakness, but in a peace hard won. His crimson eyes, once filled with an immortal's cold fire, now glowed like twilight embers. Beside him, Princess Avina sat in her silver chair. But she no longer appeared frail. Her skin was warm with color, her hair, once dull as moon ash, now shimmered faintly as though kissed by light. And though her legs trembled, she smiled when the music began to play, the gentle, haunting tune of her mother's music box. And standing just behind them, her hands folded over her heart, was Elsa. The maid who had once entered this castle a stranger, now moved like someone who belonged to its very pulse. Her simple gown of blue linen fluttered softly as she stepped forward and wound the music box, the melody echoing like a memory long asleep. Avina looked up at her father. "Papa," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Will you dance with me?" The hall froze. Even the torches seemed to hold their breath. For years, Gareth had forbidden the playing of that song, the Queen's song. But now he lowered himself before his daughter, eyes glistening. "Always, little one," he murmured. He took her hand, trembling slightly, as though touching something fragile and divine. Elsa came to Avina's other side. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The three stood beneath the silver chandelier, the hall vast and echoing. Then, slowly, Elsa began to sway, guiding Avina's steps, whispering encouragement like a prayer. Avina followed. Her legs wobbled, but she didn't fall. Gareth placed his other hand on her shoulder, lending strength without control. Step by step, breath by breath, the three began to dance. It was not perfect. Avina stumbled, Elsa steadied her. Gareth's movements were rigid at first. But soon, something greater than grace took hold. The golden glow that had once flickered in Avina's palms now radiated outward, swirling around them in delicate ribbons of light. It danced with them, alive, joyful, free. The court gasped as the air itself seemed to shimmer, every heartbeat resonating with the pulse of the music. Avina laughed, a sound pure and crystalline, carrying through the vaulted ceiling like bells in morning fog. "Papa, look," she cried, spinning once before catching herself. "It's Mama's light. She's dancing with us." Tears filled Gareth's eyes. He had not cried in a century. He had thought himself beyond it. But as the golden light wrapped around his hands and his daughter's face lifted to the heavens, he realized this was not loss. This was love remembering itself. Elsa smiled through her tears. "See, my lady," she whispered softly to Avina. "Even stars remember how to shine." Avina leaned into her father's chest, glowing with warmth that was both human and divine. "Then we'll never forget again," she said. Gareth looked at Elsa then, really looked. And in the highest window of the hall, where moonlight poured like a river, the faintest shimmer appeared, a woman's silhouette made of starlight, watching her family dance. Her expression soft and proud. When the song ended, Avina stood unaided for a moment, still, steady, radiant. The light faded gently, settling back into her hands like a promise kept. The hall erupted in applause and tears. The Festival of Starlight had not just returned, it had been reborn. Gareth lifted Avina into his arms and turned to his people. "Tonight," he declared, his voice echoing through the chamber, "we remember that even in darkness, the heart still beats." The torches flared, the music began anew, and laughter rippled through the ancient walls that had once known only sorrow. And as the night deepened, the castle that had stood as a tomb became a living thing once more, its halls singing with warmth, with wonder, with love that even eternity could not silence. And under the moonlight, the king, his daughter, and the girl who danced with shadows became one heartbeat, a promise written not in blood, but in light.